Well, the sports editor is really grateful to have Wayne Taylor chat to us. I think you're a person with a very interesting career and you've got a lot of experience and you've dealt with rugby in many, many aspects. So it's going to be a really good chat to you, Wayne. But let's first start off with your career. And you started off as a military man. You were in the New Zealand Army. Something that just always was part of your life and you wanted to experience growing up?
No, I think my mum influenced me a little bit there. I was pretty naughty at school, and look, I was one of those guys that I like to do things practically, and sitting in the classroom wasn't the thing that really rang my bells, and hence the reason that I ended up in the military and sport, and put me in an office, I'll go crazy. But I didn't want to go back. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career at that stage, coming out of school, and I didn't want to go back for my matric year because I didn't want to go to university at that stage or study. And the one thing that did really attract me was the physical side of going into the military. I think I was also undercover. I was also attracted to somebody who was going to straighten me out because I needed some direction and some get out of bed, make your bed, iron your clothes. Yeah. But look, I come from a very cool family where I've learned all those manners. But I was a teenager that I knew at that stage going in was good. So I enlisted when I was 16. I had my 17th birthday and went in, I think, two weeks after that.
Wow.
Into the military. I was accepted I went into cadet schools first because of 17 years of age, and then regular force at 18. And I did my apprenticeship as a carpenter first, and I was an engineer, so I was lucky enough to do explosives and demining and bridging and all those sorts of things. And then in amongst that, I realised the physical side of it. I really wanted to be a physical training instructor, so I trained for a year and went into a selection course and was fortunate enough to be selected and had, I think, 15 years of career as a physical training instructor in the New Zealand Army, which was amazing.
That is absolutely excellent to hear. And we're going to tie it in with rugby a bit later, but it's so good to see what the Army has done for you. Really, really good. But I always find it so fascinating when we see these different hakas that are performed, and it's a New Zealand thing. But it has such a special meaning to the New Zealand people. Did you ever have to perform a haka when you were in the Army? Was it just something that goes along with it? And what's actually...
No, definitely, yeah. 100%. And it's, I think, especially in the Army and government departments before others, I think was really embraced. The New Zealand Army really, really do embrace the Maori culture, and New Zealand Army have their own haka. Some of the companies or battalions within the New Zealand Army also have their own haka. So it's design specific. It's not just something you decide, oh, that looks cool, I'll do that. It's got a lot of history back into the roots of where you come from. The same with the schools now. And you'll notice, even when we had the World Schools Festival here in South Africa, the New Zealand schools that come out, they all have their own haka, and it signifies where they come from, the area they come from, the iwi or the tribe that is from that area has a big influence into that. And New Zealand really embraced that. We joke about being a giant melting pot because we are. Our culture is not, it comes from everywhere. My best friends are Maoris and Samoans and Pacific Islanders and Tongans. We all just one big melting pot, and we're all just Kiwis. We just all blend in together, and that influence is really what you see come through in New Zealand rugby as well. It's all those cultures coming together.
Absolutely. Yeah, because as much as it's lovely to see you on TV and, you see New Zealand about to kick off and they do the haka and, you get goosebumps because you can just feel the energy there. But I think it's actually a lot more of respect than anything else, if I could say. It's not just, oh, look at me, I'm doing a good dance. It's not that at all. It's actually really...
No, it's not.
It's incredible.
And what I would... No, exactly right. And I think one of the things that I highlighted with the World Schools Festival, because Gavin Kelly asked me about that and I explained it as I think the Hastings boys did their haka. If you are fortunate enough that you are playing a New Zealand team and they're doing a haka for you, firstly, you shouldn't be intimidated by it. It is a war dance, but it's also, it's an ultimate respect for a team to do a haka for you. You must stand and face it, never turn your back against it, face it as a team and embrace the challenge. And it is really quite a special thing to face. And I think a lot of Springboks will tell you that as well. And it's not done for any other reason than there's a lot of respect. And I think if you look at the New Zealand All Blacks as an example, Kapa o Panga is their haka. Kamati is the national haka, but on special occasions or when they choose, they use Kapa o Panga on a special occasion and they break that out. So that's why now with the All Black tests, we're watching to see which haka perhaps they're going to perform.
Sure.
But yeah, definitely. And like, as an example, if a special occasion, someone graduates from university, often their whānau or their family will be there, and they'll do a haka immediately, just as a real respect for what they've achieved. Or at a mate's wedding, you know, the ultimate there, you never ask for it, but at a wedding, some mates, you know, straight after the service may break out in a haka. That's a really ultimate compliment and respect, yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. So there's so much more to it, but it just goes to how important culture is. Very, very, very good. It's so good.
Yeah.
But talking about the army, and you said it, you know, it gave you a lot of discipline, and that was also a sort of a nice channel for you to start looking at rugby and getting involved in the strength and conditioning side of things. Is that a good outlet for you in terms of your rugby coaching career?
Yeah, I think, like, I was heavily involved with rugby in the New Zealand Army. I played for New Zealand Army and Defence Force myself and that, and I had a real passion for it. I love it. But I was, you know, I also got involved with, while I was a trainer in the Army, I got asked to also train one or two rugby team as well. So I was double hatting there. And then Murray Mexted out of the blue rang me and asked me, he was moving to the Adidas Institute of Rugby, which is the Rugby Institute in Palmerston North, just down the road from where my gym was, and asked me whether I'd be interested in doing the strength and conditioning stuff for International Rugby Academy, which then led on to, I did the leadership and the team building and all those sorts of things and dynamics with Murray and Dave Ellis, the skills coach. And through that, I met a lot of, or crossed paths with a lot of coaches. Consequently, incidentally, I came to South Africa. Dick Muir brought me here, and I met Dick on a course in New Zealand that I was instructing on, that he attended. But and then from there, then, you know, I did stuff with New Zealand Rugby. Then I ended up with the New Zealand women's team, the Black Ferns, and then got asked to take the Junior All Blacks for 3 years as well. So it's sort of, they all just, yeah, it's quite funny in our industry. As a strength and conditioning coach, you don't often apply for jobs because I think your relationship with the head coach is critical.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can apply to show interest, but ultimately, every coach I've been with has tended to have found out I'm available or come and ask me, and I've gone because we have that relationship where he trusts my opinion or values my opinion, or also wants me to get on with my side, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. But Wayne, just to go back on there, because, you know, at times I don't always understand, you know, strength and conditioning. These rugby players are big enough as it is. They don't need to be strength and conditioned. What's going on?
No, you're right. No, you're 100% right. And I think there's been different phases. So as an example, if you look back at test matches between the Springboks and All Blacks, I mean, 30 years ago or something. I mean, just go back and look at guys like Pine Tree Meads, and I mean, I know Kevin de Klerk very well from the Lions, and he's a beast. He's still a massive man. You know, it was an era where we now duplicate a lot of training that they did anyway. I mean, Pine Tree Meads, there was no four-wheel motorbikes. They carried fence posts up and down hills and fencing and hay bales and sheep, and you know, they were big physical men. Like, they were my father and my grandparents and things. They were like that. You know, they had big hands, and you shake their hands, you know who the person is. You know, we've always said that. And I think what happened is that, you know, we all changed and things became easier, and we went into a bit of a bodybuilding mindset, I suppose, with more muscle is better. And then we're now functionally training, and we do a lot of activities that the Kevin de Klerks and the Pine Tree Meads and that would have done in the olden days, flipping big tires and carrying heavy weights, and farmers they carry jerry cans, we carry dumbbells, but we are really smart around how we do it.
Yeah.
And I think the mindset, you know, one of the things that people need to understand with athletes is that we calculate strength and power to weight ratio. So the analogy I give you is, you know, Elton Junties as a young player was, he's happy to tell you, he was a tubby player at 19 years of age playing SA under 20s. I think he was around 96 kgs. So the difference was leaning him down, I don't know, 15, 16 kgs of fat, and then lean at 89. Means he went from being like a four-door car with a mini motor to now a four-door car with a V8 in them. So you decrease the mass down, increase the strength output. It gives you the ability to generate more power. So it's his mass, or any player, the size of their body and how much force they can generate. So that's why we don't say a number 9 must be this strong, a winger must be this strong, and a prop must be this strong. they all must be the same strength to weight ratio to their body weight. So if Pop's 120, he needs to be stronger to generate force to carry that mass. If a scrum half is only 85, he still needs to be able to carry that. So it's all relative.
Yeah, because two things on their way, and that's why I appreciate rugby so much, because you look at the size of these guys, and they are mobile. They are athletes. I think it's the only sport in the world that can actually execute that properly, with all due respect to other sports around the world. I mean, you look at some of these guys, classic examples, that big Duan van der Merwe at the moment, he's playing for Scotland on the wing. He's a unit, but he's mobile. He can get around the park. No problem.
No, and it literally is the way that you train. Like training functionally and putting muscle on to be able to generate, like we say, train movements, not muscles. We don't try and make muscles bigger and stronger. We train movement patterns, so you're able to move in all different directions, and your muscles are strong to be able to generate those movement patterns. And I think that's the difference in the way that they play. You have to be mindful that sometimes, and I've seen this happen in the past, where you get a player, say, like, I'm not sure if you remember, like a Sammy Tuipulotu, who played inside centre for the All Blacks and the Blues. He wasn't a big inside centre compared with a Manonu who followed that generation. But what made him special was that he was a powerful package. And at one stage, I think they tried to put a couple of kgs on him. It affects the way then sometimes you lose those things that are special about you. So in South Africa, I think South Africa have been obsessed with having big players for years. And, I was a massive fan of Geo Aplon. I thought, and like a Wayne Smith from New Zealand Rugby would take him in a heartbeat. He's an unbelievable player. South Africans' mindset for a long time, he was too small, and but he never missed tackles. He was an outstanding player. If we still had that mindset, Cheslin Kolbe would not be playing for the Springboks. Sure. And also on top of that, if you try and turn Cheslin Kolbe into a 90 kg player, you're going to lose what's special about him as a player. So it really is the package, and making, really maximising him as an athlete individually, and not trying to turn him into some other package to fit a mold. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one more name that I can throw in there is CJ Stander, who also received the same treatment. But yeah, that's a story maybe for another day. But it's just so interesting to see, and just as well that things are changing, because imagine not having Cheslin Kolbe on the field. It blows my mind. And what I've heard from a lot of guys before is that South Africans play rugby a certain way, which is all fair. But then again, you've also got to stay with the times. If the game is changing, you've also got to adapt. And obviously, yes, what works for you works, but don't be totally negligent of how the game is changing, so to say. Don't know if that makes any sense for them. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. I recall having conversations with Peter de Villiers and Dick Muir when they were with the Springboks, and I was with Dickie at the Lions, and we talked about strength and conditioning at that stage. Whether the box fits enough, whether not fits enough, and it was just a really cool conversation to chew the fat and really look at that, because Peter de Villiers came through to the Lions to catch up with Dick. But one of the conversations then was, and Peter said, but we don't necessarily want to be the same fitness as the All Blacks. We're not going to play the same style of rugby as that, which is cool. That's a very valid point. But sometimes, if you're playing a team that is really fit and strong, and they can combat you there, what was happening, I thought, was that at that stage, the nine, because players are getting so exhausted, the nine has no option but to kick.
Right.
Or when you kick to the fullback, if the fullback doesn't have at least one of his centres and two wings back, so there's four to counter-attack, then he has no option but to kick the ball back to the opposition. And if you watch for years, the Crusaders, were, I think, ahead of their time, where, if you look at the tries they scored on counter-attack, that's because if you watch the ball go up in the air, don't watch the 15, watch what's happening to the wingers and the midfielders, and how hard they bust their ass to get back to create a counter-attack. And if you're going to give them that ball all of the time, because you're not fit enough to hang on to it, not because there's a tactical reason you're kicking it, but when I look at the strength and conditioning of the players, I have to be able to give a package to the coach that he can do what he wants with them according to his game plan. I really don't want them to have to kick the ball away because my players are not fit enough to be able to do what we want to do. And that's a big thing. And if you look at the Springboks now, they're fit enough. The way that they came through, and Ali did an amazing job with them. They could do whatever they wanted. They stayed in the game. You can often tell the team on defense, if you're going 6, 7, 8 phases on defense, if you're effective in the first 3, but you leak in the 5th, 6th phase, that's often conditioning because you can't stay in that defensive pattern. So somebody's not getting off the ground quick enough to fill that hole. That's where the opportunities come for the opposition. So that's what I look at when I look at analysis. And John Mitchell was throwing things at me to look at. Sometimes we don't need to do more defense. Our defense was really, really good. Just some players weren't fit enough to stay in the defensive pattern.
And that's why strength and conditioning is so important. All those details, you've got to get it right, especially from a defensive.
Yeah, look, you start leaking on the 7th and 8th phase of defense. Yeah. You start getting nervous. But also can be an attitude thing. The guys just don't work hard enough to get up and go around the corner. They take the easy option. And, there can be a number of reasons. But, you don't want to be losing games in the last 20 minutes because you can't keep up. That's not a good position to be in.
Just on that there, because that just, when you said last 20 minutes, that's what New Zealand was prided themselves on. Just the last 20 minutes, they could turn a game on its head. Was that purely because they were just fitter than everyone else?
Yeah, look, I had a conversation with throwing a few names around here because I love talking rugby in South Africa with people because we just see it, we just love it. Yeah. And I think that's what Kiwis and South Africans have in common, Yeah. And South Africans braai, we barbecue, we talk rugby. It's very, very similar cultures. But I was consulting the Stormers before COVID with John Dobson, and he said the same thing. Like, how do they train? What do they do to really work in that intensity? If you watch a New Zealand super team train, it's very prescriptive. Where the coach doesn't just coach a session and then I run them and do their training. That's not how it operates. It's that we design a training session for 60 to 90 minutes where we get the intensity and the volume of training done specific to what we need on the field to satisfy what I'm doing, but also from a coach's perspective. So there's no standing around and mucking around and chatting. It's run on a stopwatch. Normally strength and conditioning coaches got that stopwatch, and we run things and we make things happen. And the intensity of training is as we want to play. And I think that's where it's happened for years. Crusaders have had massive success with, Robbie Dean started that a long time ago. But really, it really is that relationship where you're able to set up the structure of a training session. And even at the Lions in 2010, we had, John Mitchell, a very experienced coach. And Mitch and I both worked on the same mindset around that, which made it really easy for us to do that. Johan Ackerman, straight out of playing, pretty much his first coaching opportunity, and the same with Carlos. And I think it was a big eye-opener for them. And I remember having discussions with Uckers, who was a lot bigger than me. He wanted more line-out time, and I'd say, you're not having more line-out time. And then we'd have, and then we'd end up in Mitch's office, and then Mitch would say, how long have you got? 30 minutes. He'd say, Uckers, tell your forwards to shut up and get your line-outs done, And that really, and Uckers and I would laugh about that, but he went back to it. He's like, hey guys, stop talking cuck. Or he may even said it in Afrikaans, but I roughly knew what he was saying. We got 30 minutes. Now, we got to get things done. Bang, 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 the accuracy and the intensity, and it's not a catch up and chat. And Uckers became really, really good at it. And he's also, talking about Uckers, exceptional EQ or interpersonal skills. He's very, very good. But just that understanding of 15 minutes more in that line out of standing 3 times a week, that's 45 minutes of standing on our legs. That was unnecessary because we weren't working at the intensity we needed to. And I remember the media would always be there. I think it was a Tuesday training or a Thursday training. They would be on the side of the track at Joburg Stadium. And Mitch would look around and look over towards me and go, give 2 or something like this. And one of the media guys said, what's he doing? I said, oh no, he just wants 2 more minutes. And they go, what is he asking for them? No, Mitch understood, the physiology side of it, that, just getting excited and going overtime costs. So he was really, really strict on his timekeeping and making sure that if he needed 2 more minutes to finish the drill off, that was cool. But that communication was really important.
Wow. Man, that is interesting. Wayne, that is so interesting. Yeah, the power of time, I guess. And yeah, it's true. Because, in a rugby game, you've got 80 minutes. You don't have an hour and a half. And yeah, that's excellent. And the time on the ball as well. That also goes into consideration. So
yeah,
very interesting. Very interesting. But you also coached Tasman Mako in the Matu 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Tasman Makos, yeah.
Yeah. bit of did you enjoy the league there? Well, you must have enjoyed the league there. And a bit of a comparison between that and, let's say, the Curry Cup here in South Africa. The Mitre 10 competition has done well. I'd say very consistent, where the Curry Cup seems to just be up and down at the moment. What are your feelings there?
Yeah, so I was with Manawatu first, who are also, it was a Mitre 10 Cup then, yes. And then when I was with Manawatu, I was with the Junior All Blacks. And Dennis Brown, who's become like another dad to me, we're extremely close. He was one of the coaches with the Junior All Blacks. And Tasman Mako were, their first season, they weren't a team at all. They were two teams, two provinces about to combine. Okay. Director of rugby coming back from Scotland was Todd Blackadder. And Dennis Brown was going in as a head coach. And then he came and shoulder tapped me to go in as strength and conditioning. So we literally set up a brand new union in 2006. The head coach there now is Andrew Goodman, who was one of our captains during those first 3 years that I was there. It's really, really cool. And the amount of young talent that come through in that area that have become Super Rugby players, and then some of them gone on to New Zealand Honours, is really exciting because it's quite a small area at the very top of the South Island. It's within the Crusaders franchise. So, no, I'm a massive Tasman Mako supporter. They're playing, I'm watching TV here. You get to have breakfast and watch rugby here in the morning.
What a laugh.
Like a dream, yeah. No, so it is very cool. The competition itself, it's a really strong competition, the way that they've structured it. And there's a real spread with the change in the contracting in New Zealand Rugby. You used to have to, if you wanted to play for the Hurricanes, as an example, you needed to go and play for a provincial team within the Hurricanes region, which made it tough to move around. Like you had to play for Manawatu, Taranaki, Wellington. So the change a few years ago, I'm not exactly sure when it was that you now sign a provincial union contract and you sign a Super Rugby contract. So as an example, Aaron Smith plays for the Highlanders, the most capped Highlander now. But his home province that he has only ever played for is Manawatu, which was where my first team was there, which is in the North Island. So he's able to play for his home region of Manawatu, where he went to school and he's from. But he plays Super Rugby for the Highlanders. He doesn't have to move and play in the Highlanders franchise area anymore. So the spread of Super Rugby players across the provinces makes all the teams really competitive. Tasman Mako are the national champions, obviously. They won for the second year in a row last year, which was very cool. But it is really cool because otherwise in the past you would have tended to see in the finals Wellington is the main centre where the Hurricanes are based, Auckland where the Blues are based, Canterbury where the Crusaders are based. So generally the top players tended to be contracted to those main teams, where now it's quite a spread. So it's a really, really strong competition, great rugby. Curry Cup's history is amazing. Like winning the Curry Cup in 2011 for me was really special.
Yeah.
The quality of rugby, I think, has faded, and I don't really know the answer to that. I haven't followed it too closely recently, but I don't think it's as exciting, or a lot of the top players are now playing overseas.
Yeah. And I mean, you can discuss that at length, but I mean, one part of it, I think it is the world's oldest competition, so it's sort of that history in it, and I'm sure they'll revive it somehow. They'll do something to keep it going. But great to hear about your coaching there with Tamsin is brilliant, absolutely excellent, exciting rugby in New Zealand. That's the way I see it. Yeah, but you eventually plucked up the courage and moved to South Africa, and you made a South African woman. Well done. You brilliant choice. Excellent.
Yeah, well, I made sure that I wasn't getting married for quite some time. I came here January 2010. As I said, I came with Dick Muir over here, and then John Mitchell joined on, and Carlos Spencer and Johan Ackerman. So we had a really nice group there. And originally, Dick Muir asked me to come out for his first year with the Lions, and I declined him several times because I actually just was about to open a new bar restaurant opposite the Chiefs Stadium with my business partner Aaron Penny, and he said, in the end they agreed I could come for 6 months. Now I don't know if you remember the 2010 Super season, but we lost every game in Super Rugby, and basically I couldn't go home. So I literally finished the Super season. I went home for a week to discuss it with my business partner and my family, and flew back to South Africa. They wanted to sign me before I went back over. I said, no, I need to go home and see them because the agreement was 6 months. And I pretty much walked away from that business opportunity and came back because as my daughter said to me, I wouldn't be able to live with it. So came back to the Lions, and I wanted to try and be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Right.
And there was a lot of good guys there, like I was passionate about what we were doing. And then winning the Currie Cup in 2011 was really rewarding, because it was a tough time those 3 years, a massive change. And it was hard on the players as well. There were players there that are really good guys I have a lot of respect for, that played all their careers at the Lions from the time that they started pro rugby to the end. And at the end of their careers, suddenly we come in and we really upheaval things to try and make change. And it's not easy.
No.
And then the newer generation are coming through, and there's some hard decisions to be made to bring through the Yaku Creels and Yaku Tauta and Elton Junties, Ruandere, all those sort of guys. It wasn't easy. So, as they say, the first man through the wall always gets bloody. And I firmly believe that John Mitchell was the first guy through the wall, and it had to be done.
Yeah.
And really set up some structures for the moving forward. And Uckers did an amazing job, after he parted. Yeah. No,
definitely. But yeah, it's been an interesting time for you. And like you mentioned earlier, you chatted about the World Series, and you've obviously spent some time in South Africa now, so you would have got a taste of schoolboy rugby. And I firmly believe that this is probably the most competitive schoolboy league in the world. But let's do a bit of a comparison. South African schoolboy rugby, New Zealand school rugby. Where do you feel they're getting it right, or does New Zealand have a bit of a strength? Are the South African players a bit more skilled? Where does it lie? What do you feel? What have you seen?
South African schoolboy rugby for me is by far the strongest rugby in the world, without a doubt. And that's World Schools Festival. Again, I mentioned Johan Ackerman, where he is now in England, or he's now in Japan, but where he was in England, they sent over a school team from there, which was strong to compete. I think in the 2 years with the World Schools Festival that I was there, they had 3 or 4 of the top 5 schools out of New Zealand come here. And when they start getting beaten by 40 points, that's a real reality check. And I remember a comment in a discussion we had on camera at the end of one of the games, where I think it might have been Gareth Wright said to me, we're in New Zealand getting it wrong, with the schoolboy rugby not being so strong, but then getting through to international level, which was a really good question, because schoolboy rugby was, at the time, 3 or 4 years ago, schoolboy rugby was exceptionally strong in South Africa, but the transference from schoolboy rugby through to international level and Super Rugby level, there was a real disjoint. It wasn't coming through, or those players were heading overseas. And then around the discussion we had then with New Zealand teams, I think the difference is that in New Zealand schoolboy rugby, we take a lot of pride in the rugby, but we don't push the kids too hard.
Right.
They need to develop and grow and enjoy their rugby and physically mature. Where in South Africa, the schools are a professional setup. The coaching staff at the schools, they could be coaching Currie Cup, or some have coached Currie Cup.
Yeah.
And they have strength and conditioning programs and nutritionists and chefs, and they do an amazing job of bringing those kids through. And I also don't think that they are pushing them too hard at all. I think their structures are very, very good.
Yes.
It's just getting them that transference through to professional level, and maybe it's happening better now. I do know that there's a real attraction to go overseas, or clubs are poaching here now. They're looking for that youth, and they're spotting that young talent. And teams, when you watch teams like Grey Bloom play, they look like they look like they could step into a World Under-20 tournament and not be out of place.
Yeah.
And that's no exaggeration at all.
No,
and I think the other thing in South Africa is, I think the Afrikaans boys, they mature early. There's some big boys.
Yeah,
so 16, 17, 18 years of age, some of these Afrikaans boys, they're men.
Yeah.
And they're matured really early. So I think everybody sort of catches up and around the under-20 level. By the time they're getting around the 20, probably the different nations have caught up, because England also run very good strength and conditioning programs. So do Australia.
Yeah.
Up into Ireland and Scotland, they all are now.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens, because I think it is a very interesting time for South African rugby as well. And just leaving Super Rugby as well. Pro 16 now is the thing, at the Rainbow Cup happening just around the corner. But now you also spent some time with the Sunwolves and Honda Heat. It must have had a serious focus and attention there, because we hear that they're very disciplined in how they go about things. But Saturday no longer involved in Super Rugby. How did you find your time there? You enjoyed? Things go well?
Yeah, I love Japan. Ironically, I resisted going to Japan for a while because I had a lot of mates go up there, and I don't know, I just sort of felt like going up there was going to be a step backwards, which was such a naive thing for me, because I was sort of pushing forward with New Zealand level and Super Rugby, and I love the competitiveness, and you're under the pump, to really produce performance. But I went to Japan for 6 weeks consulting, and I spent 18 months, a year with Honda. So they renewed me several times over. Seems to be the way I do things. I come to South Africa for 6 months, and it's 11 years later. But I went to Japan to Honda as a consultant, as a high performance consultant, and ended up being the high performance director or coordinator for Honda, and really, really enjoyed that. I worked with a couple of Aussie coaches that became really good mates of mine. Beyond Basson, Marcel Coetzee were with us there as well, and we really we went up and stayed in the top league, which was often they used to, I'm not sure what they do now, they used to have, I think, the 2 top teams from the second tier automatically get promoted, but then the next year you can't, and the bottom 2 from top league drop down. Yeah. So it's hard. You go up and down, up and down. So when we were there, we worked really, really hard. We just made top league, but it was the first time that we actually stayed up in top league for the next season, which was a big achievement. So I really enjoyed it, and I wasn't going to do the Sunwolves. The position was open. They didn't know who the coach was going to be. It was Eddie Jones, and then Eddie wasn't going to do it, and others. And I actually, there were discussions that asked if I was going to look at it, and my agent at the time as well, and I didn't. And then I got a phone call from their recruitment guy. Yeah,
there we go.
Rang me and just said, "Look, are you interested in doing the job with the Sunwolves?" And I said, "No, I haven't even applied, and you don't even know who's coaching." And then he said, "No, Mark Hammett from the Hurricanes has just accepted the job. He's here in Tokyo." So I said, I remember saying to Webby, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if Hammer wants me on board, then just tell him to give me a call and I'll chat to him." And about 30 minutes later, my phone rang.
Wow.
So I spoke to Hammer, and he said, "Come, mate, let's do this." And he told me who he's going to have. And Fiulu Tiatia, the All Black number 8, he's one of my groomsmen. So we're best mates. And Nathan Major, who was obviously centre for the Crusaders and the All Blacks, was also there. So there would have been us 4 Kiwis.
Wow.
So yeah, I roughly told Hammer what I'd be looking for to make it work. And he went into a board meeting and rang me about an hour later. And then about 10 days later, I jumped on the bullet train to Tokyo and started the next day. So yeah, I was supposed to go home to New Zealand and see my family, and instead I jumped on the bullet train up to Tokyo, and it was literally a whirlwind from there. We came together as a management team 2 weeks before the season, and we had to put everything together. There was nothing, and then we got the players 1 week for a training camp the week before we played the Lions.
Wow.
We had a bit of a hit out. We quickly put them together. We had a hit out down in Nagoya, and we played against a put-together team. And then we went down to Okinawa for 1 week training camp, and then we played the Lions in Chichibu Stadium in Tokyo. And we were very competitive in that game against the Lions. And they were amazing. We had a really, really good team culture. Hammer did an amazing job with bringing everybody together. But we were on tour the whole time. I think we played 5 of our home games were in Singapore, which is not close to Japan. Yeah. We were in hotels most of the time. 2 tours to South Africa, into Australia. We came back from Australia, dropped our suitcases, grabbed all our Japan national kit, jumped on a plane, flew to Canada, came back into Japan, played Test series against Scotland, dropped our bags, picked up all of our Sunwolves stuff the following week. I think we flew straight back up to Singapore, and I think it was another tour to South Africa. So we just jet setting. We didn't know where we were from 1 week to the next. But it was an amazing first season. Really, really good guys. And it's sad they're not in there anymore. It really is, because they play such a good brand of rugby, and they were coming along. But I understand why the decision was made and why it hasn't continued. But it really, really was a special time. I was very fortunate to be part of it. Again, it's a startup, so I don't know why, but I went to Tasman Mako's. It was a startup. came to the Lions where Dick Muir just wanted to scorch earth and start things again, and then go to the Sunwolves is like, yes, it could just pick something a little bit easier sometimes. But,
well, never seems to be never a dull moment with you, Wayne. That's it. You could actually write a book now, The Adventures of Wayne, because you move around. It's brilliant.
Yeah. No, it has been good. Look, rugby's been really, really good to me. Like it's been very good to my family as well. My daughters are in New Zealand. Obviously they're older, and I've always included them as well. They've become passionate rugby supporters. They hate going into the supporters area with the students and stuff, because they were in the afters and go, these people sit around and say, I don't even know what they're talking about, Dad. They're abusing the ref. They don't even know the rules. But they've been to South Africa a number of times. I've done all the stadiums in South Africa and into Japan, and really have included them with my family, so I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, very good. Well done, Wayne. It seems like an accomplished career, to say the least. So very, very good.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on one thing that you mentioned there, and not really the channel I thought we would be chatting about, but Eddie Jones and England. I don't know if you followed Six Nations. It's, I think, a nice competition, but England seem to have really taken a knock at the moment, as he just got his mind on the next World Cup. And that's what he's doing. He couldn't really be phased about what's happening right now. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's tough.
I've never coached in competition with Eddie, but I have worked with him. International Rugby Academy, he facilitated a coaches course for a couple of weeks, and I used to work with the players course, the high performance players course, and then also work with the coaches course, and they'd tie in together. And it was amazing learning, and also I'd be in front of a lot of coaches from around the world, so it was a big eye-opening learning experience. But but coaches are different when they're not in a coaching situation. So when you're under pressure, and people must understand, Super Rugby coaches under pressure. You go to international level, the pressure Rusty was under, and Eddie Jones at the World Cup. It's massive, not just from the hierarchy coming from the rugby, but also media. And the top coaches will tell you that, probably the hardest thing I've seen coaches go through is when things are not going well, the media can be ruthless.
Absolutely.
But if your kids are old enough to read the newspapers and watch that, or their friends do, it is extremely tough on families, And as a coach, the thing I've seen high-level coaches beat up about before is just seeing their kids upset about things that are written about them in the media and that. Yeah. But it can be ruthless, And Absolutely. The media can be ugly there. But with Eddie, I really don't know. I really don't. Yeah. And John Mitchell signed on there as well. He's renewed his contract and stayed up there. Mitch has got an unbelievable experience internationally, and been around, made mistakes, he's really come a long way. As far as sometimes when things go really, really well, everybody doesn't know themselves until they have their ass in the fire, and he's been there. And he's a very, very good coach, and changed and evolved and gone all the way through. Eddie's the same. Eddie's a taskmaster. He expects people to work as hard as he does, from what I've seen, and also guys that have worked with him. And that's what it's like at the top there. So between them, they must have a plan. I don't know whether it's going to plan right now, because I can tell you now, like the top rugby boards now, yes, you can have an eye to the future in the next World Cup, but unless you're showing that you're developing a hell of a lot of stuff in amongst that, they don't like losing. Yeah. And neither do sponsors in that. So I would suggest that even if he's got an eye to it, he's still going out to win these games. So I think we're going to have to watch and see there. It will be interesting.
Yeah. Just to get your perspective, that was cool, Wayne. No, 100%. I totally understand where you're coming from.
Can we just touch on a point you mentioned earlier, though? I find it so sad that South Africa are not in Super Rugby anymore. I really do. It's for me, it was the most special competition in the world. Yeah. And if you talk to New Zealand rugby players, Super Rugby level and that, and I know a lot of the guys that are near the end of their career in Super Rugby were guys that I had as junior All Blacks around that level. It was one of the highlights is being able to play South Africans, and the friendships between most of the South African players and Kiwis was really, really strong. And now not to have that, and only test level and limited. Yeah, it's a real shame. And I was involved with, on contract with the Kings for a small period there, up into Pro 14, we toured. I think we did 3 tours over about 4 months or something. That Pro 14 is Now, people think it's easier for South Africans because of the time zone and things, but it's hectic. It's hectic travel to get up, to fly up there, and you might only be up there for 1 week or 2 weeks, and then you're back, and then you go again, and also the weather conditions. You're leaving here and you're landing in Ireland, and you're playing 2 days later, and it's like 2 degrees. It is extremely tough, and I don't think people realise that. So what the Kings and the Cheetahs were doing, for me, that was the hardest travel, and combating travel and getting players prepared game time. It's probably the hardest that I've done in my career.
Wow, that's interesting to know.
And going down to tour to New Zealand and Australia when I started Super Rugby 2010 here, I think we were gone for 5 weeks, which was a long haul, 4 or 5 weeks. But you're there and you can base yourself, and there's only 3 hours time difference, between New Zealand and Australia, and so it was really manageable. But from here up into the UK, it was hard. It was very hard.
Yeah. Then because you always hear different things, and I think the biggest reason why they left Super Rugby was a financial thing. Is there truth to that? If it's just about finances, well, I'm sure they could have worked a way out, because it's a jolly good competition. Miss watching it. Watch a bit of it now, but it's just not the same without South African teams. Was it purely financial when that South African Rugby pulled out of Super Rugby?
I really don't know. I mean, you've read the same stuff I have on. I really don't know. I think it's interesting, and I really hope it wasn't. But I really hope whichever competition South Africa are in, that it actually is really successful for those teams, because the players in this country deserve to play in a really good competition, and not just an insular one here, because the Currie Cup is an amazing comp, but they deserve in their careers to be playing against the best in the world. And at Super Rugby, it's proven. If you don't have eight internationals in your super team, you generally are going to struggle a bit, because those top teams that are in the finals, they've got 10, 11, 12 internationals in their teams. So I think it's a real shame if they don't. And I just hope that if they're going to connect up into the Pro 14, Pro 16, whatever it becomes, that it is achievable for the teams. It's exciting for the young guys from here. You go 3 tours up into Scotland, Italy, Ireland, Wales. It is cool, but you want to win on the way as well. And it's bloody hard to land there unless they really help them out financially into that competition, allow the teams to go earlier. So if you're flying up on a Wednesday and you're expected to play Saturday, that's hard. And we did that.
That's insane.
And they need to support them to be up there and potentially, rig the draws so they're able to do maybe 2 tours where they're up there for a month, 5 weeks, and they're able to achieve that. So if they can do that, then I think it can be really successful.
Yeah, we'll wait and see, because I think they've announced the first 3 fixtures for the Rainbow Cup, but it's only its local fixtures, and then we'll see what happens, because I think it's going to go Rainbow Cup, Currie Cup, and then Pro 16 from what I can gather. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But anyway, it is what it is. But I do miss the Super Rugby. It
is quite cool though to see some of the top players that have been overseas that are coming back and wanting to play locally here and there. And
that is good.
To have a Dwayne Vermeulen that come back into the competition here, that's a real win. And I know it takes a checkbook to do that, and that's no fault of the players. They're a business in themselves, and they need to secure their futures in Japan and France, and do that for them and their families, and they need to do that. But to have the ability to come back here and play back here, I think is really cool. And to maintain Sia Khaleesi, yes, he's moved from the Stormers to the Sharks, but he's still playing in South Africa, and it's cool to be able to see that happen.
Even when Frans Steyn came back, there was like a big yay.
Ruan Pienaar, come back, exactly, and I think Ruan Pienaar was good enough to go to the World Cup. He was in fantastic form, and to have those players back playing with the youth is incredible.
No, very much so. Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. But Dwayne, you're a busy man. You keep yourself very busy with a few things, but could you give us a bit of a breakdown as to what you're currently doing? What business are you operating now? How's things going in Johannesburg?
Yeah, cool. So the reason I'm back here actually, is because I finished in Japan. Like I said, I did a Honda, then I ended up doing Sunwolves and I did the national team. So I went back to back to back. So I decided to take a break. And I went back to my family in New Zealand. I came back to South Africa for 3 weeks to see my mates. And then with the intention that in a month or 2, I was going to head back to Japan, potentially on another contract, go back into a club. And I met my wife here. So we met, and then let's just date for a few months and then we'll see. We may have to do a long distance because of Japan, etc. And by the time the opportunities come to go to the Northern Hemisphere or Japan, I just decided not to go. And I've got a stepson, an amazing stepson. He's 10 now, but at the time, you know, respectfully, we decided to base ourselves here. He has a really strong relationship with his dad. So we've based ourselves in Joburg, and I started a company, WT Human Performance.
Nice.
And I work with some pro athletes. So I've been working with MMA, UFC. I worked with Soldier Boy over at #1 Squash and JP Brits. A golfer that was going, pushing for Sunshine Tour. I've got a couple of cyclists that cycle at national level. I've got a 15-year-old at the moment who's top 3 or 4 in swimming as well. So I love working with those guys and helping them. And then I consult. So I was, like I said, consulting Stormers and with the Kings. And the good thing for me that came out of lockdown was that I spent time at home because I was away a lot. And I really enjoy it. So I have a studio. I close my gym. I have a studio from home where I rehabilitate athletes and clients. And then I do all my, I've got a big open air training area in the estate where I just train groups, 20 to 30 early in the morning. And it keeps me really busy, which I'm enjoying. And then it gives me time to do other things as well. I'm working with Techno Gym as a master trainer for them to help upskill their master trainers. And with COVID, obviously, the ability to travel to Italy has been restricted, and that hasn't necessarily happened as much as we would have liked. But working with them and do a lot of work with Biogen as well, as an ambassador for Biogen, and exciting the direction they're going with their property, with their product development and supplements and influencing healthy living. So that's a real passion of mine as well.
Sure. So you're a busy man, Wayne. You got lots on the go. It's excellent. Good to hear.
Yeah, I stay busy. Yeah, that's it. Look, you can't complain right now. With some people, businesses are struggling and things, and I'm very fortunate that people are still investing in their health. I know that it's extremely tough for people with gyms because people are so skeptical to go back into the gym because just keep everybody safe. It's tough because of the sanitizing and the keeping the safe distance and masks and things as well. It's made it tough, and hence the reason I've gone outdoor training for now. And I think a lot of people are really comfortable with that.
No, definitely. Well done, Wayne, and wishing you all the best. I hope you can keep going from strength to strength. Really good to see you getting involved. And I mean, a guy like you sorting people out. You could ask for anything better. It's excellent. Well done.
Cheers.
But Wayne, as we sort of draw to an end, just a quick one. Best rugby leader I think possibly ever existed, Richie McCaw. What do you think? I mean, that guy's leadership was just the best. I don't see anyone from around the world just matching up to his sort of level of competency. What do you feel? What do you think there?
Yeah, look, I 100% agree. I've met Richie. I wouldn't say that I know him at all. He's sort of like, I left New Zealand when he was really becoming the big thing, I suppose. He was at the Crusaders when I was within the Crusaders franchise at Tasman Mako's. And interesting, like I remember Steve Hansen was presenting at International Rugby Academy when I was there. And one of the coaches in a Q&A said to him, if you could have any player in the world in the All Black team, who would you have? He said, I've already got him, Richie McCaw. And at the time, I must admit, I thought to myself, he has to say that though, because he's his captain and they've got to be like this, and I thought that. And the more that I was around, I was very fortunate to be around that era of like Steve Hansen, Wayne Smith, and Graham Henry presenting and things. The tone, all of the tone, and then coffee chat or over a beer, it really wasn't. It wasn't a sales or a media pitch. They genuinely, like we have. If I could only have one player to pick, if he was playing for any other nation, he would be who we picked. And I think if you sort of get more of a picture of who the guy was, and and how hard he worked at school in his matric year, and how he aced everything through school, and his leadership when he was at school. But then I don't know if you've watched the documentary Chasing Great with Richie McCaw, right back when he was just a kid, and you must watch that.
Okay.
And one of his uncles sat him down and they wrote some goals down, and it was about being an All Black. And he said, no, you want to be an All Black. You want to be a great All Black, And he, as a kid, but that's a great documentary to watch, especially even for children to watch. And it's behind the scenes with Richie, but just he has a mindset like Todd Blackadder used to say, if it was raining and shitty weather, he would always go and train and run hills because he knew that his opposite guy probably wasn't doing it. And that gave him the edge on game day in his head to know I've worked harder than this guy. And I know he hasn't put the work in that I've done. But even talking around some players that, played at the Crusaders when Richie was coming through that I know are very good athletes, when they tell me about his training ethic and his mindset and the way that he trained, when I hear them say that, I know he's a different beast, yeah. So led by example. I mean, I think everybody always, has a relationship worldwide. They hated Richie because of what he did at the breakdown. But I think if you look at the open side flankers around the world, they don't tend to have a long span in the game because when the rules change at the breakdown, it tends to bring in a different open side. If you look at New Zealand rugby from a Michael Jones running to a Josh Cromfield on the ground, they're two different players. And for him to be able to adapt to the rules over the span that he did as the most capped All Black, and I think internationally he's up there, then he must have been intelligent enough to adapt. And he got penalised early in the game, and then he just played to the refs. And I think players like that, they don't just do analysis on the opposition, they do analysis on the referee to see how the referee is going to rule the breakdown. Yeah. And for me, that to be able to win ball at the breakdown and not be penalised, people are always saying, oh, the ref or the ref or the ref. For me, that's just an intelligent player.
Yeah, true.
He knows where the line is that he can push. He sometimes stands up, okay, cool, I got it wrong there. But I think, you can see the players around him. For me, he's the greatest player we've seen come out of New Zealand, and he just won the Halberg Award for Athlete of the Decade in New Zealand.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. There's a lot.
And also just finished some crazy woman.
Yeah, Ironman or something, or
adventure race. Yeah.
There we go. Wow.
Yeah. No, he's not normal. Yeah.
He's not normal.
No, he's not normal. Yeah.
Well, Wade, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. Thank you so much for the great conversation. Really dissected everything so nicely there. And it was nice to look at the whole picture of rugby, from international to schoolboy to Currie Cup to everything that's on there. Strength and conditioning, first class. Thank you so much, Wayne.
No, thanks. It's been a great chat. I really enjoyed it. And as you probably picked up, I'm extremely passionate about South African rugby.
It's good.
I support the Springboks 100% of the time unless they're playing All Blacks. And that's never going to change unless I'm part of the Springboks and there's no team I want to be more than the All Blacks. I love South African rugby, and I love the culture of South Africa that they are as passionate about rugby as we are as Kiwis, and that's why we just bang heads when it comes to sport, because we have equal passion for it. But I think the other thing that shines through is if you looked at the Twitter and social media from New Zealand after the Springboks won the World Cup, the outpouring of celebrations and congratulations from New Zealand rugby players towards the Springboks was massive. And if we can't win it, then the only other nation that we will be happy seeing win is South Africa, and I don't think it's ever going to change,
Well,
so special.
Long may that rivalry live. I think it's a good rivalry, a healthy rivalry, and I still see it as the biggest rivalry in the world, and may that be like that for many, many, many more years to come. So,
100%, I totally agree. Yeah.
Wayne, you're a class act. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for the chat. We will chat again soon. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. You have a good day now. Go well.
Yeah, you too. Cheers.
Bye-bye.